Imagine for a second that you're standing in the middle of ancient Rome. You're looking for a quick snack, maybe some gossip, and a fresh bottle of mouthwash? Well, I hope you're not squeamish because back then, that minty fresh feeling came from human urine. Yeah, I'm serious. They actually imported bottled pee from Portugal because they thought it was the strongest stuff for whitening teeth. Welcome to the side of history your textbooks definitely skipped. Today we are diving into 10 amazing facts about ancient civilizations that will make you realize our ancestors were either absolute geniuses, totally unhinged, or a little bit of both. Let's start with a classic, the pyramids. Everyone knows they're massive, but did you know they weren't actually built by slaves? This is a huge myth. Archaeologists found burial sites for the workers nearby, and these guys were living the dream. For 2500 BC at least. They were highly respected, paid in high-quality bread, and get this, they were paid in beer. The average worker got about 4 to 5 liters of beer a day. Basically, the ancient world was powered by a permanent happy hour. Speaking of things being older than we think, let's talk about the woolly mammoth. Most people think they died out in the Stone Age, right? Nope. While the Egyptians were busy building the Great Pyramids of Giza, there were still mammoths walking around on an island in the Arctic. They didn't fully go extinct until about 1,000 years after the pyramids were finished. So in another timeline, a pharaoh could have technically had a pet mammoth. Just let that sink in. Now let's head over to Central America to visit the Maya. These guys were the ultimate math nerds of the ancient world. They understood the concept of zero long before most of Europe, and their calendars were more accurate than the ones we used until quite recently. But they also had a bit of a wild side when it came to flirting. If you liked someone in some ancient cultures, you didn't send a DM, you threw an apple at them. In ancient Greece, throwing an apple at someone was a literal marriage proposal. If they caught it, they were basically saying, I do. It's definitely a more aggressive way to start a relationship than swiping right. While we're on the subject of the Greeks, did you know they basically invented the first robot? Around 400 BC, a guy named Archytas built a steam-powered wooden pigeon that could actually fly. And let's not forget the Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old analog computer that could predict eclipses and track the stars. When scientists first found it, they couldn't believe it. It's like finding a smartphone in a Victorian coal mine. Now back to the Romans for a second, because we need to talk about their vomitoriums. You've probably heard that Romans would eat so much they'd go to a special room to throw up and keep eating. Total lie. A vomitorium was actually just the name for the massive, wide exits in their stadiums. They were designed so thousands of people could spew forth out of the building at once after a show. So, less gross, but still a pretty intense mental image. Over in the Indus Valley, which is modern-day Pakistan and India, they were living in the future while everyone else was still in the mud. Over 4,000 years ago, these guys had city planning that would put some modern cities to shame. They had grid-patterned streets, multi-story brick houses, and the world's first indoor plumbing. Almost every house had its own private bathroom, connected to a sophisticated underground sewage system. They were literally more hygienic in 2500 BC than most of London was in the 1800s. If you think the middle finger is a modern gesture, think again. The ancient Greeks were using it as an insult way back in the 4th century BC. They called it the long finger, and it was meant to be a pretty crude reference. Even the Roman Emperor Caligula used to make people he didn't like kiss his middle finger instead of his hand just to humiliate them. Some things truly never change. Let's talk about Cleopatra for a second. The ultimate Egyptian queen, right? Well, technically, she wasn't Egyptian. She was Greek. Her family, the Ptolemies, took over Egypt after Alexander the Great, and for nearly 300 years, they refused to even learn the Egyptian language. Cleopatra was actually the first one in her family who bothered to learn it. She was basically a Greek tourist who ended up running the whole show for 3 decades. And finally, if you've ever had a bad night's sleep, spare a thought for the ancient Egyptians. While we have memory foam and silk pillowcases, they slept on pillows made of stone. They were these curved, carved headrests made of marble or wood. The idea was to keep the head elevated to protect their elaborate hairstyles and keep bugs from crawling into their ears. I don't know about you, but I think I'll stick to my IKEA pillow, thanks. The more we dig into these civilizations, the more we realize they weren't just primitive people. They were innovators, pranksters, and engineers who face the same problems we do. They just solved them with a lot more beer and stone pillows. Which of these facts blew your mind the most? If you learned something new today, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel out.